It's Tuesday, April 28th, 2009, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville. Produced and distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C., this is your NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about our show at our website, stash.normal.org, and continue the education and conversation on our blog as well. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. The podcasting and blogging technology for the NORML Daily Audio Stash is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. For your professional web design needs, visit redaphid.com. Good day, Stashers, and welcome to the podcast. I hope you're having as happy a day as I am. Want to give a special thanks to all the people who've been calling me and emailing me, interested in getting involved with a NORML chapter in their area. As you know, I am the National Outreach Coordinator for NORML, and it is my goal to have a NORML chapter in all 50 states. So getting those states online, especially in some of the more conservative areas of the country, has been quite a challenge, but I've already received calls and emails from people in Kentucky, and today, the latest state that starts with a K, Kansas, has emailed me wanting to get a chapter started. Also, some good folks are just about online in Charlotte, North Carolina, so if you're in any of those three areas or anywhere else in the country and would like to get involved with NORML, send me an email at chapters@normal.org. Don't forget, this Saturday is the Global Marijuana March, May 2nd, taking place in 248 cities around the world. Check out globalmarijuanamarch.org for details on the city near you. And if you're looking for a sign to take to the march, check out our blog at stash.normal.org. Over on the left-hand sidebar, I've got a flashing banner ad with some example signs available from the good folks at Oregon NORML at ornorml.org. You can print these out. These are big old PDF files that will print out on a full-size poster board that you can get at most of your self-serve print shops. Check it out on the left-hand side of the Stash blog. And an announcement from Colorado NORML, who announced today that Tanya Burgess, a recent graduate of Georgia State University's School of Law, is the 2009 recipient of Colorado NORML's Hunter S. Thompson Scholarship to the NORML Aspen Legal Seminar that's taking place in the first weekend of June up in Aspen, Colorado. I'll be there for the second year in a row. This is an amazing seminar that NORML puts on. It's aimed toward legal professionals, criminal defense lawyers and the like, so they can learn all of the latest statistics and science behind marijuana and the changes in the laws and the way they can help defend your rights. But it's also open to the public, so anyone who'd like to attend just to learn more about marijuana law and marijuana law defense is invited to check out the NORML website at norml.org. But hurry, we've already sold out the host hotel, and there may not be very many seats left at the seminar, so check out the website as soon as you can. Now, coming up on today's Daily Audio Stash, we have your hemp headlines, including a look at decriminalization in Portugal, some political news from Pennsylvania, and two stories from Florida that highlight the need to know your rights as a marijuana consumer, and also highlight the insanity of our laws against drugs. Today is our Government at Work, so we'll be speaking with Brad Ernst from Texas NORML. He's going to be telling us about the movement of marijuana law reform in that legislature. Our Daily Toker Tunes, brought to you by MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, features Variety Tuesday and a comedy song from Dean Friedman called Doint Doint, It's Just a Little Joint. And in our final segment, we're bringing you more special coverage of the Philly NORML, New Jersey 420 Freedom Forum that was held last week in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Derek Rosenzweig, the chair of Philly NORML, speaks at the Freedom Forum. Only 4 more days till the Global Marijuana March. Better start practicing your chants now. It's time for your NORML Daily Audio Stash.
Hello, I'm Paul Stanford from the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, or THCF. Medical marijuana is legal in 13 states today, and THCF has clinics in 8 of those states. Our doctors help qualified patients obtain an authorization for medical marijuana in their state. Patients are eligible for medical marijuana with a history of either severe chronic pain and or nausea, cancer, AIDS or HIV, hepatitis, glaucoma, seizure disorders like epilepsy, chronic muscle spasms such as in multiple sclerosis or asthma, neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, and gastrointestinal disorders like IBS or Crohn's disease. If you or someone you know has one of these conditions, our doctors will help you obtain a permit for medical marijuana. THCF Medical Clinics has offices in Washington State, Oregon, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, Montana, and now Michigan. Call 1-800-723-0188 or go to the web at hemp.org or 1-800-723-0188.
Now it's time to take a look at the latest stories about marijuana from news organizations across America and around the world in our NORML Daily Audio Stash, Hemp Headlines. Marijuana decriminalization working in Portugal. A New Time article entitled "Drugs in Portugal, Did Decriminalization Work?" examines the practical theory of how decriminalization and use, when applied to a society properly, can have resounding success, and that is exactly what is being praised in the country of Portugal. First, let me explain the Portugal model and put it into perspective. As we all know, with the exception of 13 states that have medical marijuana laws, the sale and cultivation of marijuana is illegal in the United States under both state laws and federal laws. The laws may vary from state to state, but typical first-time possession varies from a civil fine to a year of incarceration. Contrary to what one might hear in the news, in the Netherlands, marijuana is also a crime. The difference in the Netherlands is the Dutch have decided not to enforce those laws because it's in contrast to what the people desire. However, when the Dutch decide to go after a particular grow operation or cannabis shop, they have full charge of the law behind them to do as they please. The Portugal model is the only one of its kind in Europe because they were the first European country to remove all criminal penalties for personal possession of drugs, including marijuana, and they have been completely legal since 2001. Compared to the European Union and the US, Portugal's drug use numbers are impressive. Following decriminalization, Portugal had the lowest rate of lifetime marijuana use in people over age 15 in the European Union, 10%. The most comparable figure in America is in people over age 12, 39.8%. According to the Time article, a Cato study concludes that Portugal's legalization program is a resounding success, having reduced overall drug use, HIV cases, and cutting addiction rates by half across the board with all hard addictive drugs. This is an extremely unique report because Portugal, unlike other countries, didn't just dabble in decriminalization for a select group or demographic. They simply legalized everything. Senator Arlen Specter of Pennsylvania to switch from Republican to Democrat. Washington, D.C. Veteran Republican Senator Arlen Specter of Pennsylvania disclosed plans Tuesday to switch parties, a move intended to boost his chances of winning re-election next year that will also push Democrats within one seat of a 60-vote filibuster-resistant majority. Specter said in a statement posted on a website devoted to Pennsylvania politics and confirmed by his office, quote, "I now find my political philosophy more in line with Democrats than Republicans," end quote. Several Senate officials said a formal announcement was expected later in the day or Wednesday. Specter has long been one of the most durable politicians of either party in Pennsylvania. In recent years, he has battled Hodgkin's disease, a cancer of the lymphatic system, but maintains a busy schedule that includes daily games of squash. As one of the most senior Republicans in the Senate, Specter held powerful positions on the Judiciary and Appropriations Committees. It was not clear how Democrats would calculate his seniority in assigning committee perches. Okay, so I'm a little excited that with the switch of Senator Specter to Democrat and the eventual seating of Senator Franken in Minnesota, President Obama's party has a filibuster-proof 60-seat majority in the Senate. But my own admitted partisanship aside, I'm excited about this news from a marijuana law reform perspective. Pennsylvania Representative Mark Cohen, Democrat of Philadelphia, is set to introduce medical marijuana legislation tomorrow. Senator Specter is a cancer survivor who will have considerable seniority in the Senate. In his full statement, Senator Specter said that, quote, "I take on this complicated run for re-election because I am deeply concerned about the future of our country, and I believe I have a significant contribution to make on many of the key issues of the day, especially medical research. National Institutes of Health funding has saved or lengthened thousands of lives, including mine, and much more needs to be done." End quote. Senator Specter also said last year that he would use medical marijuana in Pennsylvania if it were legal. This was from the Philadelphia Daily News. Specter addressed the Daily News editorial board yesterday on local, national, and international issues. Several years ago, early in his battle with cancer, Specter told me that he had considered introducing legislation supporting medical marijuana, so I figured I should follow up on that. Yesterday, I asked Specter, someone who could potentially benefit from it, whether he would use medical marijuana himself. Quote, "If it were legalized in Pennsylvania, and I were in pain, and my doctor prescribed it, then yes, absolutely I would," end quote, he told me. When I asked if he would consider sparking up without it being legalized, I'd swear there was a brief smile before the senator said he was, quote, "certainly not about to say I would violate the law," end quote.
Stupid Stoner Stories.
As a public service, NORML reminds you that smoking marijuana will not make one stupid. However, some stupid people do smoke marijuana. Don't be one of those stoners that make the rest of us look bad. Learn your lesson from today's
Stupid Stoner Story.
Florida man helps police charge him with 6 felonies.
A University of Florida student was arrested Monday and charged with 6 drug-related felonies after officials found marijuana, crack cocaine, and prescription drugs in his possession. At about 11 p.m., county sheriff's officers saw David Jansen, 23, standing on the corner. According to the sheriff's office arrest report, when Jansen saw the officer, he showed signs of nervousness by walking away and looking over his shoulder to see if he was being followed. When the officer approached Jansen, he found a multicolored glass pipe in his front pocket, which Jansen admitted to recently smoking marijuana out of, the report stated. Jansen told the officer that he had prescription medication, marijuana, and other narcotics in his apartment. After Jansen signed a voluntary consent to search form, the officer searched his apartment and found marijuana, a straw, cocaine, and prescription pills. He was charged with 5 misdemeanors and 6 felonies.
Wait, officers, I'm not through. I also cheated on my taxes from 2005 to 2007. When I was 15, I sneaked into an R-rated movie. Yesterday, I shoplifted a Zagnut bar from the Piggly Wiggly. I also ripped off all the tags on my pillows and mattresses in violation of federal law. Isn't there anything else you can charge me with? All right. To start with, standing on the corner alone at night is not a crime. Don't be nervous. People who aren't committing crimes aren't nervous around police officers. They look at them driving by. Sometimes they wave. Still, the cop might stop to talk to you. You don't have to answer his questions, and at any time you can say, "Am I being officially detained? Because I need to be going now." If he insists on keeping you there, then you have a right to ask, "Can you tell me why I'm being detained?" His answer could be useful to your lawyer later. But if he does detain you, and let your lawyer worry about whether he has the right to. He does have the right to pat you down to make sure you're not armed. A glass pipe in your pocket will definitely feel suspicious. And at that moment, right there, when that cop's hand touches your pipe through your clothing, that's the moment when you steadfastly observe your right to remain silent and immediately ask to speak with your attorney. You know, the one from the NORML Legal Committee at NORML.org, whose name, phone number, and address you have written down and keep in your wallet or purse at all times, or program into the speed dial of your cell phone?
Empty your pockets!
I'm sorry, officer, but I do not consent to any searches, and I wish to speak with my attorney. If he's going to arrest you and search through your pockets, fine. Just don't resist or say anything.
You been smoking out of this pipe?
I'm sorry, officer, but I can't answer any questions until my attorney is present. Had David Jansen just done that, he'd be looking at misdemeanor paraphernalia possession, and at most would have led to 1 year, $1,000 fine, and a 6 months to 2 years driver's license suspension. Did Jansen become convinced that admitting to marijuana smoking from the pipe, admitting to possession of marijuana, cocaine, and pharmaceuticals back home, and allowing the police to go in and find them, that was somehow going to make them say,
Hey kid, sorry about the pipe thing. Yeah, at least you were honest. We'll just take these drugs away and leave you be. Have a nice day.
Look, I know it's tough. Police are very well trained to fool you into giving up your legal rights and making a prosecutor's job easy. Check out the Busted video from flexyourrights.org for some helpful training on how to deal with police encounters. And get that NORML Legal Committee number into your cell phone. Florida man arrested for sex and alcohol crimes with up to 20 children free on $25,000 bond. Witnesses told deputies that during the summer of 2008, Robert Wayne Thomas, age 42, would throw parties at his home, hosting up to 20 children at a time between the ages of 11 and 15. Thomas reportedly gave the children alcohol and then had them play games like Truth or Dare. During these games, witnesses said Thomas dared the children to do things. Those who refused were criticized by Thomas and the other children. During the games, Thomas allegedly poured an alcoholic beverage onto a 13-year-old girl's stomach and then lapped it up off her skin. At one point, Thomas apparently permitted several children to sleep in his bed. Investigators said that when they questioned Thomas, he told them he fantasized about having sex with one child. He also told investigators that he touched one of the children inappropriately. Thomas was released from the Levy County Jail after posting $25,000 bond on Friday and agreeing to have no contact with children. But at least Thomas didn't have any marijuana or prescription drugs in his home like our previous story of David Jansen. Mr. Jansen is still in jail for possession of marijuana, cocaine, and prescription drugs because he wouldn't shut up to the police, and he can't come up with the $40,000 bond. Yep, that's right. The 42-year-old Kinko the kid-loving clown throwing booze-fueled Truth or Dare parties is out on a $25,000 bond and a promise, but our constitutional rights-ignorant drug-using 23-year-old student is somehow $15,000 more dangerous to society. 2 counts of lewd and lascivious conduct with a minor are the crimes that Thomas is charged with. Under Florida sentencing guidelines, that's a level 5 third-degree felony. Giving marijuana to a minor, that's a level 5 second-degree felony. How can we respect any criminal justice system that declares touching children sexually to be a lesser crime than giving them marijuana? I'm not suggesting that getting kids stoned is a good thing, but it's not going to kill them, and it's certainly not going to mess up their minds like sexual abuse can.
Dear Mr. President, Last November, you were elected on a platform of change. You promised the country reform on the political system. Well, let me tell you what NORML.org and many other Americans want changed. Marijuana laws. It was estimated that America made its 20 millionth arrest for marijuana possession this year. You want a real economic problem? How about the amount of money being spent on simple possession arrests? Incarcerating people costs taxpayers around $23,000 per year, and NORML estimates that up to $10 billion a year are spent on enforcement for mostly nonviolent offenders. Now let's imagine what would happen if marijuana was legal. Not only would we save billions each year on enforcement, but imagine the economic boost. You would produce jobs growing, selling, and tax dollars coming in from the regulation of marijuana. I'm not saying let people loose to sell on the streets. Put government regulation in to tax and control its sales like alcohol. Street dealers are the problem, not a guy with a gram in his pocket. Put in harsh punishments for people who drive under the influence, and stop punishing people who enjoy marijuana safely in their home. Mr. President, if you really want change, legalize marijuana.
Tuesday is our look at your government at work, here at the Audio Stash. While the inevitable re-legalization of cannabis hemp will have to happen at the federal level, the steps leading to that destination take place at the state and municipal levels. We focus in on the initiatives, bills, and amendments regarding cannabis across all 50 states, and what activists like you are doing to enact a positive reform to our cruel and outdated marijuana laws.
Body dies, the eagle cries, the birds they sing, the creatures learn. It's an honest day's work, yeah, 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 yeah. It's an honest day's work.
If you're working hard to make an impact in your city and state, please email us at stash@normal.org. And let's share your local efforts with the worldwide cannabis community. Together, we can affect our government at work.
Afternoon pollution rises high into the sky. How can we still deny the truth?
Taking another look at your government at work, we're going to go down to the Lone Star State of Texas to speak with Brad Ernst from Texas NORML. He's the public relations director down there. How you doing, Brad?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. How you doing?
I'm doing great, and I'm always interested to talk to you folks down in Texas, where I imagine it's kind of tough to get marijuana law reform moving, but you've got a bill down there, House Bill 902, a decriminalization measure. Tell our listeners again to remind them what this one would cover for the state of Texas.
Well, basically, as it stands now, possession of cannabis under 2 ounces is Class B misdemeanor, punishable by up to 180 days in jail and a fine not to exceed $2,000. What this bill would do is change the classification of under 1 ounce to be considered as a Class C misdemeanor, which is up to a $500 fine and no jail time if convicted, but it would still leave the possession of 1 to 2 ounces at the same level of penalty.
Oh, okay. So you're
It
just
also
kind
has a few things written into the bill regarding occupational driver's license after like a third 3 strikes and you're out kind of deal for driver's licenses, how it is in Texas.
So this kind of sets up 3 levels then within Texas law: below 1 ounce, just a fine; ounce to 2 ounces, misdemeanor jail time; and then above 2 ounces, what happens there?
Above 2 ounces, I believe there's different levels of misdemeanors all the way up until I believe.
But definitely jail time.
Even a pound can be considered a misdemeanor sometimes, but it's a felony.
Yeah.
It's discretionary. But basically, that's coupled with, in conjunction of HB 2391 that was passed into law in 2006, giving the officer discretion to cite and release for up to 4 ounces. So if you're riding around with under 1 ounce and you get pulled over, depending on where you are in the state, you can get a ticket, depending on your officer's discretion. And then when it comes to court, if it's under a 1 ounce, then you should be able to have it dismissed or just receive a Class C misdemeanor. And then between 1 and 2 ounces, you may not have to go to jail initially, but if you're found convicted, you can still face up to 180 days in jail.
Okay. So this House Bill 902, you just had a hearing on this, and I understand you testified at the hearing.
Yes, I was joined with a couple other gentlemen in testifying on HB 902. I had some really good information. I'm just not so sure that I feel like it may have fallen on a few deaf ears.
Did you get any questions from the members of the committee?
I did. I got a couple questions. One really surprised me. A question I got after my whole spiel, and I was actually the second to talk. The question was, from Representative Debbie Riddle from Houston. She asked me, she said, and I may be going to show my ignorance here, but what is cannabis? So, politely, as the committee was sort of giggling and chuckling about it, I explained to her what cannabis was, that it's been around for thousands of years and only in the last 60 or 70 years has it been prohibited, and it's a scientific clinical term for what she knew to be as marijuana. And I tried to be as polite as possible. I didn't want to come off as being a smart ass, but it seemed like a really stupid question to be asked by someone who is supposed to be making the decision whether or not 160,000 people are jailed for this substance over the next 2 years in Texas.
Yeah. It really goes to show how deep that prejudice has been ingrained, and how the drug war, started in places like Texas, El Paso, as a matter of fact, and used that Mexican slang term marijuana to confuse people about the cannabis they had always known about. So I guess it's not too surprising to hear that question coming, but I'm glad you handled it in the way you did. You said your testimony fell on some deaf ears. What were some of the things you were trying to convince these legislators?
Basically, I could have spoken, for an entire day at length about all the wonderful things that could come. But since this bill is just sort of just a declassification of one amount of possession, to a lower penalty, it was just, our angle was, between now and September 1st of 2010, which would be the next possible juncture for Texas to have this happen. We would estimate it at about 160,000 people would be jailed, and out of those people, about roughly 50% of them are under the age of 25. And speaking from experience, a semester locked behind bars because of cannabis possession can greatly hinder your college education. And what we need in Texas is to put these students through college and have them become productive citizens, and not jailing them and thwarting their FAFSA application, eligibility.
Yeah. And how about the economic point of view? Was there any economic argument made to these legislators, especially now that, these states are facing such hard times?
Yes, I spoke on the point that our taxpayers in Texas would spend about $500 million a year just jailing the simple possession. Just the arrest that we can prevent by passing this bill there would be about $500 million that could be appropriated to, an area where law enforcement resources suited. I know that a number of people in Austin froze to death last year. I know that no one died from overdose of cannabis, but there are people in need of a lot of help, and there's just government resources that are just being frivolously wasted.
Yeah.
And so I tried to bring that fact up. Basically, to keep the medicine out of the hands of the children. That's a good point as well, because the people that we talk to think that, legalizing marijuana is just going to put it right into the hands of the children. Well, the statistics show that everywhere that they do have similar programs, it hasn't increased, the teen usage of marijuana. It hasn't increased the usage of marijuana by adults either. It's one of the easy points that they can make to try to argue, but it's just not factually based. It's just preconceived notions.
Yeah, it's an emotional argument, that's for sure. Hard to get people to look past that sometimes. So, was this hearing, was it a work hearing? Was there any votes taken on this? What's the next step for this bill?
Well, the deal is right now it's left pending in committee, and about 7 o'clock this morning on my way to work, I called Representative Pete Gallego's office. He is the chair of the Criminal Jurisprudence Committee. And the bill's left in pending. And I tried to call Dutton's office to see. Dutton is the representative who introduced the bill, and he would have to call for it to have a vote taken. And as of yet, he has not. So I guess we kind of wanted to let all of our representatives at least be aware of what cannabis was before they voted on it and voted against it. So still, even though listening to reason, I'm not sure that these people are going to vote on the side of logic.
Well, we got to keep hammering away at it. It'll happen eventually. For our listeners out there that want to help and get more information on the fight for ending adult marijuana prohibition in Texas, where can they go as far as internet websites or email addresses or phone numbers?
Well, we are at Texas NORML, NORML.org. And one thing that Texans can do is join us on May 2nd, which is the Global Marijuana March. We celebrate it locally as the Texas Cannabis Crusade. And you can go to TexasCannabisCrusade.com. We'll start at 10 a.m. at Zilker Park in Austin, and we'll march at high noon to the Capitol steps. We've got a number of musicians, I think about 10 performers, including DJ Slim from Boston, and some reggae bands from Texas. We got Champa, Champagne with Friends, Shotgun Hustler. Anyways, the list goes on and on. TexasCannabisCrusade.com. We'll have a MacGyver-style bong-making competition. That'll be a $10 entry fee. And, just tons of fun. Food, music, freedom, fun all day.
All right. Well, check it out at TexasNormal.org. Brad Ernst is the Public Relations Director from Texas NORML and joining us on the telephone from the Lone Star State. Thanks for fighting for this bill and all the great work you're doing down there.
All right. Thank you.
Hello, this is Webb Hubble. Life insurance is now available for responsible marijuana smokers. For years, responsible marijuana smokers have not been able to access affordable life insurance products. NORML uniquely supports cannabis consumers. 2 carriers have already agreed to offer all of their traditional life insurance products at all levels without excluding individuals who smoke marijuana responsibly. Help NORML and help yourself. If you've been declined for life insurance, are paying above market premiums, or simply want to know what now may be available in the way of insurance for marijuana smokers, contact me at info@mclaughlinonline.com or simply call me at 202-293-5566.
The battle to end adult marijuana prohibition can sometimes seem endlessly frustrating and impossible to overcome. One way we bond as a community and draw strength to continue is by rejuvenating our spirit through art and music. The Marijuana Music Awards exist to recognize those sonic artists in all genres of music who feature a ganja-friendly message to motivate and inspire all the cannabis community. Our daily Toker tunes, brought to you by MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, feature the finest in blues, rock, jazz, hip-hop, rap, reggae, country, bluegrass, and dance music to enhance that 420 feeling and refresh all you stashers for another day on the front lines of the drug war. Enjoy this cut from MarijuanaMusicAwards.com and visit our blog at stash.normal.org to learn how you can vote for your favorites and enter your Toker tunes in the 2009 Marijuana Music Awards. We hear 2006 Marijuana Music Awards Best Comedy Song, Doint Doint, It's Just a Little Joint, by Dean Friedman this Variety Tuesday. Dean Friedman's powerfully unique and original talent has ensured Dean a string of hit songs since the 1970s, previously reaching the top of the UK singles charts. Friedman, now based in New York, has created music soundtracks for TV and film, including the hit British TV series Boone. Dean Friedman is currently host and producer of the popular BBC Radio Scotland series Dean Friedman's Real American Folk, which features stories of New York and beyond. For more about Dean Friedman, check out myspace.com/Dean Friedman. Enjoy Variety Tuesday's Doint Doint, It's Just a Little Joint by Dean Friedman.
When I was just a young, impressionable lad, my mama said, you pay careful heed. Watch out for loose women. Be on the lookout for that evil weed. Now I'm a dutiful son, I always do what I'm told. So I searched and searched until I met a scantily clad beauty. She was something to behold, smoking a funny looking cigarette. And she said, doint, doint, it's just a little joint. Makes you feel happy, light-headed and buoyant. Hardly has any ill effects at all. It's a whole lot safer than alcohol. Well, I took a little drag and then I took a little more, but nothing much was happening. Suddenly I noticed I was lying on the floor. I was dizzy and my head was spinning. And there and then I understood, it all became so clear. I was filled with euphoria and bliss, free of anxiety, devoid of fear. I turned to that gal and I said, what the heck is this? And she said, doink, doink, it's just a little joint, tailored to provide you with an alternative viewpoint. It'll open up your third eyeball. It's 10 times safer than alcohol. Doink, doink. When I went off to college, I moved into my dorm, went to my freshman orientation. The dean of students said, prepare to be transformed. You're about to receive a higher education. That is just exactly what was soon to come to pass. He wasn't merely speaking off the cuff. The very next day, as I was heading off to my very first class, the cute co-ed down the hall said, honey, would you like a pop? And she said, doink, doink, it's just a little joint. From Skidmore to Harvard to West Point. It's gonna be legal soon in Montreal. It's 100 times safer than alcohol. Doink, doink. Doink, doink, doink. So I became enamored of this wondrous herb, in spite of its dubious reputation. Though the legal conundrum has left me somewhat perturbed, it has not diminished my appreciation. You know, there was one time I was just sitting on a bench under its intoxicating spell, when a little gray-haired lady sat down right next to me and asked, young man, what is that peculiar smell? And I said, doink, doink, it's just a little joint. It's good for your glaucoma and arthritis in your joints. It'll lower your blood pressure, and just like Geritol, it's a lot less toxic than alcohol. Doink, doink. Doink, doink, doink. I'm not saying it's totally benign, though I'm a fan of this fantastic greenery. Best not to smoke it all the time. Definitely not when you're driving or operating heavy machinery. But at the end of a long, hard, miserable day, I don't care what law is on the books. Just one little puff can wash all your cares away. How they gonna turn 100 million God-fearing citizens into crooks? And I said, doink, doink, it's just a little joint, guaranteed to never disappoint. It's herbal remedies, virtues I extol, and a pipe or a bong of brownies, a hand roll. Doink, doink, it's just a little joint, makes you feel happy, light, habit, and fun. Hardly has any ill effects at all. No more dangerous than alcohol. Doink, doink, it's just a little joint. Doink, doink, it's just a little joint.
I'm Alan St. Pierre, Executive Director of NORML. Have you heard about the new super pot that's supposedly 20 times more potent than your father's Woodstock weed? Don't believe the hype. Marijuana's THC potency has always varied, even in the 60s and 70s. And the drug czar's numbers are full of, well, exaggerations. While no intoxicant is harmless, cannabis is non-toxic and far safer than alcohol. No matter how much you smoke, of whatever potency, you cannot die of a marijuana overdose. Potency is irrelevant anyway. More potent pot just means you smoke less of it, meaning less harmful smoke in your lungs. This is a prime example of harm reduction in action. Besides, the government already allows the prescription of THC pills. Its commercial brand name is Marinol, and it's 100% potent. Meanwhile, the federal government won't allow dying people to use natural marijuana, no matter what the potency? Does this make sense to you? Learn the facts about pot. Visit NORML.org today.
Now we continue our coverage of the 420 Freedom Forum held last week in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, a co-production of Philly NORML and NORML New Jersey. Recording engineer, Nick B. This will be Derek Rosenzweig, the chair of Philly NORML, speaking at the Freedom Forum.
So I'm sure some of you have heard this argument. You legalize medical marijuana and it opens the floodgates. You're going to legalize marijuana. Well, guess what? They're right. The legalization and regulation of marijuana as part of the solution for the many problems our country faces is something that Philly NORML fully supports, but is not for any one single reason. Legalization is an economically sound policy which would bring a highly demanded commodity into a legal atmosphere. It would help the U.S. and Mexico deal with the rising drug-related violence by depriving the gangs of a substantial revenue source. It would help alleviate the citizens' mistrust of government and law enforcement. It would alleviate a large burden on our criminal justice system, and scientific and medical research would finally be unobstructed. Legalization would also allow doctors to recommend marijuana to patients when they believe it would benefit them, and the hemp industry would flourish again in America. The one flaw with legalization is that currently politicians are generally scared of it. Convincing them that it's the ideal solution and that it's politically viable is a long and difficult process. And patients who desperately need access to marijuana for medical use do not have the time to wait for such a change. At this time, I'd like to read parts of a few letters I've received from patients who need or use medical marijuana. One patient writes, "I suffer from compound complex epileptic seizures. Lamictal and Keppra are prescribed to me as treatment. From what my doctor tells me, these are two of the strongest seizure drugs out there, and I take both in almost maximum dosages. The use of cannabis has helped me in many ways. It has helped relief after a seizure, cutting recovery time in half or faster. All muscle pains are lessened, so normally physical action isn't painful, as well as expediting my mental state to full capacity. Cannabis has also helped lessen and delay seizures, in some cases even prevented them." Another writes, "My son is 28 years old. Since age 4, he has suffered from serious seizures. Literally hundreds of medication combinations failed to help him. When he was older, he began using marijuana to help with the pain of violent seizures. He found it also helped him relax a lot more. Being someone who is not of small stature, when he had a series of grand mal seizures, the muscles in his body screamed at him. Marijuana helped ease the pain more than any synthetic drug did. He uses it on a regular basis now. After 24 years of seizures, he had his last full-blown seizure in June of 2008. Since we live in PA, I am in constant fear that he will face legal problems." Another writes, "I suffer from chronic back pain and pain from multiple digestive disorders, and I am tired of having to use chemicals that make me feel terrible to treat my conditions. I hope that this will be approved and that a doctor will allow me to be a medical marijuana patient and treat my conditions with something less harmful than that I have used and trust. Thanks for notifying me of this breaking news. It is a ray of sun in this dark time in our country." And lastly, a few years ago, I had an injury which required multiple back surgeries. One of those surgeries caused a problem, which brought on an incurable disease known by the acronym RSD. It stands for reflex sympathetic dystrophy. This is a chronic neuropathic pain disease that is very painful. My life, for the greater part, revolves around a hospital bed, but I can ambulate with a cane. My life has changed in so many ways. I not only have the pain that is associated with the failed multiple surgeries, I also have the pain of RSD. I have been on some very heavy narcotics steadily for the past 10 years. My medications are affecting other areas of my body, and this has made me quite concerned. The medical field can offer no more help. I then began to search the internet for articles of alternative pain relief and came across articles that stated that some people found help using cannabis. I studied as much as I could on the subject, enough to come to the conclusion that there might be some hope at the end of the proverbial tunnel. I guess my hope is that someday a legislation will be passed so that I may at least try cannabis to see if it would work for me so that my life could be a little more pain-free and my quality of life would improve some. My father also has this disease, and as someone who has to live with that and see his family members in pain, it's unbearable. Pennsylvania needs to allow its citizens to use marijuana with the recommendation of their doctor while full legalization and regulation is debated on a national level. Patients with serious ailments or illnesses such as cancer, HIV/AIDS, multiple sclerosis, chronic pain, glaucoma, ALS, which is also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, reflex lymphatic dystrophy, severe nausea, asthma, post-traumatic stress disorder, severe anxiety, many gastrointestinal disorders such as Crohn's disease, and many, many others. We need to do this as soon as possible. I'm here to tell you that by the end of the month, Pennsylvania will have a medical marijuana bill introduced and ready to debate. On Wednesday, March 16th, Pennsylvania State Representative Mark B. Cohen went on the record on the Metro International that he would introduce medical marijuana legislation in Pennsylvania. I have confirmed with him that by the end of April, the Barry Bush Compassionate Use Medical Marijuana Act of 2009 will be introduced in the General Assembly. At this time, it is unclear whether Pennsylvania will allow retail outlets to distribute the medicine to patients who qualify. That may be left up to the Department of Health. The state will want to tax any sales Representative Cohen has estimated potential revenue of $25 million for the state, based on Pennsylvania being about 1/4 of California's population, and there are $100 million in tax revenue generated from medical marijuana dispensaries. In either case, we hope to give patients as wide a range of options as possible in order to avoid dealing with the black market. And we believe that it's inappropriate to ask severely ill, injured, or otherwise disabled people to purchase their medicine from, by definition, criminals. Patients will have the ability to grow their own medicine or designate a caregiver to grow it and provide it for them. In most aspects, it is very similar to both Rhode Island's legislation and the bill currently going through the process in New Jersey. In general, the bill will provide patients and caregivers with a registry card that they can use to identify themselves as qualifying under state law to law enforcement. The data supplied to the Department of Health will be held under the strictest confidence and privacy, and police will only be able to query the department on whether or not a person is qualified. No other information will be disclosed. Anyone with a felony drug offense will not be able to become a caregiver or cultivator. We have tried to maintain a balance of usable cannabis that a patient can possess or grow. Pennsylvania's for Medical Marijuana recommends an amount that doesn't exceed 12 mature plants, 2 other plants, 12 clones and immature plants, and 5 ounces of usable material. This is enough to provide a patient, on average, with 36 ounces of usable cannabis per year. And that's enough to allow a patient to smoke or vaporize 2.8 grams of cannabis per day. For most patients, that's enough. In the most extreme cases, much more may be consumed on a given day. Now, the Barry Bush Compassionate Use Medical Marijuana Act of 2009 will also allow for medical use defense during a trial, as long as the defendant can provide sufficient evidence outlined in the bill which would validate their assertion of medical necessity. Asset forfeiture by the state will be prohibited for valid demonstration of medical use. Our bill was named after Barry Edward Bush. Barry was a graduate of Sun Valley High School in 1996 with a paralegal certification from Widener. He was a retired political activist and a former employee of Pathmark and Alden Rug Mill. He was a magazine editor, a member of Keystone Alliance, and ACT UP Foundation, and AIDS Awareness Group. He was instrumental in drafting the country's first workplace right-to-know law and was the founder of American Spirit. Barry came to Philly NORML in late 2005, asking to help him get medical marijuana passed in Pennsylvania. We obliged, helping him build a website and a network of patients and advocates statewide. while he worked on getting support from the legislature. Unfortunately, Barry died from complications due to advanced HIV/AIDS on July 11, 2007. And while I only knew him for a short time, his dedication to making medical marijuana legal for patients who need it inspired me to continue his campaign and for us to put his name on the bill. My hope, and the hope of Philly NORML, Pennsylvanians for Medical Marijuana, and all the patients we represent, is that the legislature will come together across partisan lines to do the right thing and give the patients the protection they deserve. I'm the co-chairman of Philly NORML. Our website is www.phillynormal.org. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out and have a safe and happy 420.
I work with the Philly NORML group myself, and I have to say they're a great bunch of activists. On May 2nd, the Global Cannabis March takes place all around the world, and there'll be a big contingent of it going up South Street right here in Philadelphia. Now, there's also a march up in New Brunswick. If you can't make the Philadelphia one, you came from North Jersey, you can go to the New Brunswick March as well. But I guess it gets underway about 3:30, Derek, is that right? 3:30 asking people to meet out there? Right at Broad and South, and it's a march right up South Street. Last year there was about 600 people out for that, and we're expecting some more this year. So if you want to get involved with Philly NORML, May 2nd is a good day to do that. Let's hope for better weather than we're having today on 420 for the Global Cannabis March as well. Next up today, as I said...
Thank you for downloading the NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. We are produced by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. Our executive producer is Alan St. Pierre. Our deputy director is Paul Armentano. Our webmaster is Brian Judy. And web production is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. As always, you can catch up on the latest information about marijuana at www.norml.org. And you can interact and download from our Audio Stash blog at stash.norml.org. For everyone here at NORML, I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, hoping all your harvests are bountiful and your encounters with law enforcement are non-existent. We leave you today with a reminder that Saturday is the Global Marijuana March taking place in over 248 cities worldwide. Check out globalmarijuanamarch.org for details. It's important that you get out in the streets and show your fellow countrymen that you are not afraid to stand up for your rights, and you demand the right to be treated like our beer-drinking friends. There's nothing to be ashamed about being a responsible adult marijuana consumer, and it's time for us to come out of the cannabis closet and make our numbers known. We have great political power. It's just a matter of us realizing how many of us there really are. Thanks for downloading the podcast and joining the fight to end adult marijuana prohibition. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.